Hi everyone, welcome back to Tangerine. This video is part of the Louisahhh Festival interview series.
Today we are welcoming Louisahhh and her live band to discuss a bunch of things. Techno-punk, creating a safe space for people who don't really belong anywhere, and freedom in itself, so let's do it. The reason why we wanted to talk to you guys is because obviously of the mix, like of your different backgrounds and the new material, and there's just a lot of newness, I think, with this whole project, which is great. And one of the things that you probably get a lot, and there's a lot of people qualifying you as techno-punk. So I love that, and I just want to know.
Us too.
Can you expand on that a little bit and tell me how techno and punk kind of meet, and what do these things have in common, and how do they maybe clash? Can you expand on that?
I mean, so Mile and I started a label together in 2016?
Yeah.
2015. Oh, time flies when you're having fun. Called Rare. And the ethos of the record is based on the idea of making punk for techno heads and techno for punk rockers. And I think that it kind of brings together not only our kind of diverse backgrounds, because I came from kind of loving more punk music growing up, and Mile came from a real rave free party background in France, but also the idea that I think a lot of the ethos that we want to bring into techno has a very punk mentality in terms of creating challenging music that we believe in, that might be countercultural, that's not kind of necessarily, as we said, playing for the audience or following trends, but is really kind of trying to have a certain not only aesthetic but also a political motivation that's grounded in freedom. Mile, would you agree? Not business techno. Anti-business.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's even, as you said, it's also political. It's even more than the music, I think. It's really about like what we've been trying to do with our music since we started working together, is creating a space for people who are not necessarily welcome somewhere else, like for outcasts, for people who don't feel. We want to create a home for people who don't have a home, musically or politically or aesthetically, like however you want to feel it, but it's like a place where you feel safe when you don't necessarily fit in anywhere else. So I think that's like a bit more, it's just the techno-punk thing, it's like, it's not really even about the music, it's more about the attitude and what kind of space you're trying to create for people.
Actually, I think we can see it at the shows that we're playing. I can see the difference between like my background playing in kind of like white boy fancy math rock, and like the punters we get in for the Louisahhh shows, it's always very diverse and very young and LGBTQ plus. I don't know. It's just a very diverse public, and it's really refreshing for me to play for these people and not like middle class gentrifié graphiste.
Sorry, graphiste.
J'ai rien contre les graphistes, hein, désolé. So yeah, that's. I have graphist friends. Mon beau-frère.
Keep coming.
Okay, so you use your voice quite a lot on this work. In this work, can you walk us through the theme of the album?
Sex and death.
Yeah, okay. Is it like
these are the themes? Simultaneously, as Bertrand said. Just kidding. Petit mort.
Ouais.
It's a recovery.
It seems quite personal and introspective. As are you always inspired by personal things or other stuff too?
I think, as we kind of talked about in the last question, there's a lot of like political themes, and for me, and now it's happening again, but like, because as I mentioned, the theme of the record and a kind of theme of my work is like erotic energy, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's explicitly sexual. It's more about this kind of trying to connect with something that feels very alive. And right now, especially with the US political situation, trying to put bans on abortions and really trying to politicize and control women's bodies specifically. And I mean, also like a lot of bodies, you know, that to kind of have a space to express that feels very important and vital right now. And also to like, as a woman, be talking about that on stage in a way that feels really vulnerable and also really aggressive feels important in this moment. And I mean, I guess like I don't have any. I've always written very personally, and so it's only now that I'm actually writing a new record, trying to kind of have take on other persona or other points of view than my own. But it remains quite personal.
Okay.
Well, both can definitely mix, I guess, because you know we're in this together. So you know, again, so you talked about like the rise of fascism, really. But at the same time, in the last few years, I feel like there's been a lot of people speaking a lot about the wrong things that are happening in, you know, as women, for example, and especially in the music industry. So, you know, as a woman in the music industry, do you feel like there's been some kind of positive change in the past, I don't know, 5-10 years for ourselves, or not so much? And I guess we still need to do some work, but did it evolve at all in a positive way?
I mean, I think a lot of it has, especially kind of post confinement, like because we didn't play out shows for 2 years. So there's been a lot of space created for kind of marginalized communities to create like kind of something from bedroom DJing, which I think is actually really powerful and exciting because it means there's a lot of new faces. And I think like we've been talking about it a lot, actually, this idea that it's easy to feel threatened by like new things, and instead trying to really hold on to this idea of like, hopefully we helped pave a road for those new things to be possible. And I don't know, I mean, I do feel like our, you know, at present our touring party is like 50% men, 50% women, which feels really good. And also like, I don't think I'm misspeaking when I'm saying I'm surrounded by feminists, you know, and that like we do talk about this stuff. And I feel like the fact that it is a conversation feels really hopeful. And the fact that it is like, it's an ongoing conversation in the full industry. And that often means like we have to expose a lot of darkness before there's a lot of change. So it can feel worse before it gets better, but that doesn't mean there's not progress. Yeah. Anything to add, guys?
I think that covers it.
Let me ask the men so they can explain it to us. Just kidding.
Let me mansplain that to you. I feel like promoters always are kind of, but it depends if they're doing it for the actual image of it or if they really want to, but trying to promote more women in lineups and stuff. But it's like, I saw this post on Instagram, I can't remember which DJ was saying like, book me for my sets, not just because you want like a black woman on your bill, which is always a tough one. But I guess maybe it starts by positive discrimination to like overturn stereotypes, and it's maybe an annoying step, but a necessary one to kind of get to the space that we're looking to get to.
No, I would say like, as Bertrand was saying, I see a lot of young women attending the shows we're playing, and I can see how they look at you, you know, and how it's empowering to see a woman on stage talking about the things you're talking about, and, you know, like being honest about who you are and owning your shit, you know. It's like, I think that's really powerful, and that's how things change. And yeah, just to bounce off onto what Bertrand was saying, that I think that's why it's important to push for some kind of positive discrimination, because it's also about role models. You know, if you're like a 16-year-old girl and you're interested in music and you go to festivals and concerts, and all you see on stage is like guys, how are you gonna just connect to that? You know, you need to, I mean, there needs to be some kind of diversity on the stages we're playing. And that's important because it's also inspiration. Like, you need to have, like, when you start and you're 16, you need to have, like, you know, you're a fan, you're like, you want to be someone, you want to be like someone, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, and also I think in terms of speaking about diversity, like, when we say diversity, we don't just mean the same, like 6 women playing every big festival, like, because that, I think there's a lot of performative inclusion, and like, that's not it. And hopefully, like, there are ways that if we're talking about the industry here, we can push things forward in terms of like inclusion riders and, you know, like working from this side, but it's also, I think, up to, you know, often there's this question of like, what's it like to be a woman in techno? And it's like, that's a stupid question, first of all, but, and that's not the one that you asked, you know, and for which we are grateful. But this idea that like, it's somehow the artist's responsibility to like figure that out. And it's like, no, ask the promoters that, ask the agents that, ask the management that, like, you know, there's so many talented people that are not just like cis white dudes making music right now. Sorry, cis white dudes, but although they're also very included, they're also very talented. But like, if we want to kind of create a broader spectrum of who's represented on stage, then like let's do the legwork, you know, and not just like have the easy get.
Yeah. So I liked how you mentioned being a young woman and, you know, witnessing this kind of positive change and being more represented, and not just a young woman, but being someone in the LGBTQ community, or, you know, and seeing more and more people in the front of the stage, really. So again, being in your position, would you have some piece of advice for young women who would like to get into DJing or into music in general? You can't say no.
I know. I mean, I think it is like, I think it's mostly be yourself, you know? And I think that, you know, when we get sent demos, we often get really, really talented producers that sound like other talented producers. And it's like, I think that the thing that we're really looking for in terms of A&R and that you can actually use as a weapon is a kind of minority, and that people are very excited to release music by women right now, or, you know, anybody who's, again, not a cishet white dude, is like, that you can use your unique qualities and like not being perfect, like your kind of mistakeism to make stuff that's interesting and like trust it, you know. Like, I mean, and for my personal mistakes, I think there's a lot of ways in which I held myself back by being afraid to ask for help or being like afraid to show up not perfect. And I would encourage people to like get over that sooner than I did, you know.
On that note, would you have any cis white dudes watching us right now who are in, except for these three,
be nicer.
No, but like people in position of power in the industry, what would you like to say to them, if anything?
I'm gonna let you take this one.
Thank you. Well, cis white dudes friends.
My dear cis white dude friends.
Brethren.
Mes chers compatriotes.
You've had it good.
Go away. No, I mean, it's like, I think it's a lot. I mean, like one thing we have to remember is that as any industry, it's a lot about power and money, you know, also. So, like, coming at it from a cultural angle is good and it's important, but I don't think it's enough. Like, because, you know, the power and the money are stronger than that. So it's not just about behaviors and, you know, mentality and changes in culture. It's necessary and it's good, but it's not enough. So I think that's what it's about. It's like, we need institutions, we need venues, we need, you know, festivals with like women and LGBT people and like, you know, BIPOC people to be heading them. And that's where things are going to change. And it's not just about like, you know, this, you know, I don't know, festival A&R who's like 50 and has been doing that forever, asking him to change. That I don't think that's enough. And I don't think that's going to happen fully. It's really about the power structures behind it. And that's how things are really going to be moving. Like if we can, you know, if we can convince these structures to really have a hard look at themselves and say, you know, we need to change things up, and that's how things are slowly going to evolve. But, you know, just, yeah, again, like culture is important and it's great, but the power is somewhere else.
Thank you. So, obviously, we wanted to have you three to also discuss this 3-piece live setting, which we already mentioned a little bit. But can you just tell us very quickly how this happened? Like you mentioned that you two already knew each other for a while, from what I understood. But how did this formation happen?
Bertrand James was gifted to us.
I just got an email out of the blue saying, "Louisahhh live band, you want in?" From I used to play in a band called Autour, a French math rock band basically, and our booking agent was the same one that is actually doing the booking for Louisahhh now. I got an email from him saying, "Do you want to do that?" And basically, I knew the name from the Bromance era and like the famous tracks, and well, that seems like fun. And I do coming from rock, I still do have a culture for electronic music and really enjoy specific genre and stuff. So it was really exciting for me, and then we met, and it was like, I'm English, she's American, and they all just kind of rolled through like that. No, I don't think it's...
They have a secret project. It's secret, don't talk about it. I mean...
So that's, yeah, basically how it happened for my side of things.
And then because Bertrand has extensive touring experience in terms of like live context, he also hired the rest of the crew essentially. So now everybody's Breton and tough as nails, and also this like sweetie pies. So it all worked out, and it's really like, honestly, in terms of, I think, coming from a background just where like we would be a duo kind of around the world, or often all alone. It's so lonely. So to have like, you know, a gang to go around the world with, it feels like a fun adventure. And it's really like, I think in terms of like mental health and emotional health is such a different, and financial health is a different story, but mental health and emotional health, it feels like a lot more fun and exciting and kind of nourishing in a different way than DJing is.
I think we're learning a lot, like Bertrand and us, like we've been learning a lot from each other.
From the two different worlds,
yeah.
Basically, that we come from.
Techno-punk.
Techno-punk, and the other way around, but it's true that the both worlds operate in such different ways. I mean, I had to grind so hard, and I don't say like DJs don't have to, but I mean, like my touring conditions before Autour kind of got medium big when we started touring the world and stuff. It was like we did 200 shows before getting a professional cachet in France. I mean, yeah, the money's shit, whatever happens and stuff. And so, I mean, I haven't learned anything from that. I just knew that was what you were doing before, and that's like too bad for you that you've gone the other way. Le déclassement.
In terms of, you know, in terms of music, really, like I've learned a lot from working with you and working on this project specifically, because I had no idea how to set it up, and you really like pitched in, you know.
What the live setup
yeah. So that, and I think you also, you know, you're also learning from the practice and the experience and the cooperation.
Because it's a level of production that's above what I'm used to doing with
Yeah.
bands that were minor successful, but there was just like, go on stage, play your instrument, and that's like, fuck it, that's all there is. There's no lights, there's no anything. I've just always relied solely on just like playing the drums, and so this is interesting and quite enjoyable because there's like there's another scope, une autre portée, quoi. There's ouais, just like the political background, and I don't know, just yeah, there's that real feeling of there being a kind of safe space or like something special happening in front. That's a really different ambience to what I'm used to, and actually just playing the kick drum is quite an experience for just doing like, and people going burp, burp, burp. Yeah, it's fun.
Okay, so you touched on that a little bit, but you know, since this project is very like obviously stage centered, I just want to know about how the whole lockdown thing went, and you know, what did you do when you couldn't access stages or clubs? Did you have some I don't know, some kind of new perspective on things? Did you just take a step back? Was it like, I mean, as an artist, was there anything that happened in your creative process during that time? For all of us.
Well, I mean, I think that like our first show and the finishing of our kind of first Sonic residency was February 2020. And so like then there was, you know, an uncomfortable period of waiting for about 2 years before properly touring, and that's only just starting to happen now. And I mean, like, it's easy to be like, it was fucking heartbreaking, and it could have been a very different experience. But I think if we want to focus on the positive, I think for me at least, the gratitude of every show and the potentiality that it could be literally the last show that we play has created a kind of a different paradigm than I have ever experienced in terms of performance, where like there's no other point than to have fun. Like you can't fucking worry about it. You can't like be anywhere else in the moment. Like the only thing is to like taste it and have a good time and enjoy it. And like, yeah, that it's like, and I'm like prone to anxiety and depression. So I've never actually experienced that much presence. And it's kind of created this, like this portal to a level of connection with the thing as it's happening, and the audience and the band, and kind of like feeling it in a way that I didn't anticipate. And so, you know, like because we essentially play the same set every night, because like there's a lot of programming that's happening, that if that's going to stay exciting, it has to have this kind of element of like, this is it, motherfucker. Like the next show isn't a guarantee. You know, and I think that that's actually it's a gift to be able to see it like that, because it feels real.
Yeah, I feel like in a lot of what you're saying, it always ties back to being present, like in the present moment.
So hard.
I know, I'm working on it. But yeah, so you mentioned France, and I think, you know, it's safe to assume that living in France and being here, like in time and place, has to you know, influence your work in some kind of way. So was there anything that you picked up from life in France that just made it into your work, really?
Bonjour.
It's a good one.
Alors, I mean, I think that like I essentially got delivered to Miles' doorstep, like by a stork on the second day I arrived in France, so we could work on an EP together, which turned out to be my first release on Bromance. And I think that like having close collaborators that are also in a lot of kind of bi or transcultural relationships, in terms of like Miles' wife is Russian, Bertrand is Anglo-French, and like I'm obviously an American living here. I think that a lot of it, like it's very easy to assume you know about the world when you exist exclusively within your own culture, and to have those ideas challenged. And for me, I think a lot of the stuff that focused on sex especially was because like a lot of the assumptions I had made about like especially dating did not hold true here, and it was really confusing, like very disorienting. Just because it was like, I would be like, do you want to go on a date? And they'd be like, here's a 9-hour boat ride, and like a weird grand gesture. I meant like get a coffee and go for a walk. Like what the fuck is happening? You know, so I think that like it's been very helpful to kind of like realize that like when I say apple, you don't necessarily like understand apple. You might be like, yes, apple, and like think of a pineapple, you know, like and that like that's actually not a bad thing, that it can be used as a way to like enhance one's experience of being alive. I mean, do you guys have anything to add in terms of like what the experience of being in, you know, a lot of kind of multicultural relationships has given? You're like, no.
Yeah. It's a weird one for me because I've been living in France my whole life, so it's hard to say what France has influenced and what's from my English background, because yeah, I will say that it's far more stimulating to be in a very multicultural environment. I'd say, even just as we were talking about rise of fascism and stuff like that, it's just basically just knowing that everyone's nice and fine, and that there's no point in hating people for just being them. And I think that's how it starts.
Yeah. The battery died, but it was the last question actually. So, well, unless there's anything you would like to add,
No.
we got a second camera anyway, so you can go on.
No, I'm okay.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. That was
Thank
really
you for
nice.
having us.